your accent was something that you had to battle with a lot. Do you think that you had to suppress your Latinness to kind of stay into the industry?
I'll break it down like this. Terrence, to this day, I'm like, my God, I really wasn't that nice to him. I gotta admit. Let's make this salacious. Drop a bomb on me.
My mom always said you're gonna have to choose one. It's either your career or your family.
What's your regret?
My regret? Probably
People would put this unfair competition
against us.
Yeah. How are you pivoting besides social media and now obviously podcasting?
See how she switches and she tries to take my show from me.
No. I gotta be real with you. Honestly, I did not know where my next job was gonna be. I knew I was getting older.
It's okay to be a mom on TV and, have kids. Is it something that you regret?
So when it comes to that, I gotta be honest, I'm a little delulu.
I'm so excited for you guys to get to know me a little bit more and get to learn some more things about some of my favorite people in my life, industry insiders, because there is always more to the story. I'm Roxy Diaz, and welcome to More to the Story. Hey guys, welcome to More to the Story. I am your host, Roxy Diaz. And on this episode, I'm super excited because I get to sit down with one of my closest girlfriends. You've seen her on television everywhere. We're going to talk about a little bit of what it's like to go up against your friends, usually for the same job. Yeah, that happens. Plus choosing career or kids and pivoting your life to becoming an entrepreneur. I am so happy to have my guest, my girl, Julissa Bermudez, actress, model, entrepreneur, social media guru, beauty expert, todo lo de todo. She does it all.
Guru? Wow.
Own it.
Yeah.
Own it. Take it.
I am a guru. Thank you very much.
I don't get nervous. I get anxiety. Okay. Which is more of like an anxiousness to start.
Yeah. But then once you're rolling, you're good.
Once you're rolling, you're good. Yeah. Like once you get your first person on the carpet or the first person that you're talking to, then you're good. You still get nervous?
Yeah, I think it depends on the project.
What do you get more nervous for? Live stuff or going on the red carpet and...
Well, live, you just never know what's going to happen.
Uh-huh.
But I kind of like that. Well, I also feel like I'm a little rusty. It's been a while, but the style of like in which when we started versus now, I feel like is so different.
It is.
It's not as nerve-wracking as before.
It's more relaxed.
Exactly.
It's way more relaxed.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be like that cookie cutter stand-up host. Like when you think of the dynamic of how much hosting has changed.
Oh my gosh.
From when we first started to like now, it's
completely different.
Night and day.
Yeah, I did a video about that. Like when I first started, I was getting all this feedback about things that, I needed to change or feel like I needed to change. And nowadays, I think that the beauty of being able to show up exactly how you are, which feels like that's something that you should have always been able to do.
Uh-huh.
But there wasn't, when you're, kind of breaking molds or, trailblazing in certain ways, and it's different.
A lot of people don't know that you started though, before BET, you were already doing television.
Yeah.
So bring me back to Miami, how it started.
So, okay, my very first audition, it was actually a cattle call, and it was called an audition, but it was actually about 500 people in line going round after round after round to host this live show that was going to be a mix of basically pop culture with reggaeton, with Latin culture. It was for us, the Latinos that grew up in a Spanish-speaking household, but were really influenced by all the things that were cool in America,
How did you hear about the casting call?
So I had a manager out of Long Island, this woman that I'll never forget her name, Donna Malo. She was a little viejita, like out of Long Island, that was just sending me on auditions. And this was one of the auditions that she sent me on. And I showed up thinking what I thought a TV host should be, with as much energy as possible and a little mix of Barbara Walters, I thought, and just the things that you...
There's nothing about Julissa Bermudez that screams Barbara Walters
at all.
to me.
Exactly. I don't know what I was thinking. But I didn't have anyone to really, maybe a little bit of Daisy Fuentes too, because I was influenced by her. But yeah, I had never done it before. And I thought, okay, well, if I show up with as much energy as possible and this like zest of life and also trying to be professional, I would get the job. And it worked because I did.
Do you remember what number you were in line?
I have no idea.
So you actually waited in line with all the other people to... You know that's how they did us for 106 and Park.
Yeah, I went through that process again too. Not as much as you.
You did the new faces.
I didn't do the new faces.
You were already on this,
but they still had me go through rounds when I did BET as well, the audition for that. But for the roof, I remember getting there pretty early in the morning, and we went until straight up nighttime. Mm-hmm. And I went through all the rounds. They paired us with different people. And it was, I had no idea what I was doing, honestly. I just showed up as authentically as I could and a little mix of what I thought was what you needed to do. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then you make it to BET.
Yes.
And then you were there for the center for a little bit.
Yeah.
But really 106 was the thing. Can you remember what happened when, I know Free and AJ are out.
And that was literally from a Friday to a Monday.
So talk about what happened.
So I was doing the after school hangout show, The Center, which I thought was really funny because I actually never finished college. And I'm giving college advice on this show, how to write a term paper. I was learning as I was going along. I was like, oh, okay. Again, kind of a little bit of an element of, it felt like a bit of imposter syndrome because I didn't really know this information. And then they added me to the audience while AJ and Free were hosting. So they would toss to me in the audience, and then something happened along the way.
Do you know what happened?
I think it was a contractual thing with them. Mm-hmm. They were back and forth and negotiating, and I guess this is what I gathered, couldn't come to some sort of land in a place where they can continue doing the show. Yeah. And then we didn't have a lot of hosts at the time. I remember that Tigger was doing a couple things outside of just Rap City, and then they had me doing, again, the audience and also the center. So they kind of had us multitasking and doing different shows. So it was a Friday, and AJ and Free announced that I don't even know if they made an official announcement, but they just didn't come back. And then they literally pointed at AJ, not AJ and I, but Tigger and I were like, okay, you guys go. And I was like, what? Okay. So it kind of happened on just out of nowhere.
You didn't even have time to catch your breath.
No. And it was very different, as you can imagine, being in the audience and kind of having that support of, you're in the audience, you feel like you're one of the people there to have a good time too, and kind of no pressure. Mm-hmm. And I was doing backstage interviews, so I did get a little taste of that, and before the guests would come out. But then being on, you know what it's like. You walk out and you're on the main stage, the couch, It was totally different.
How did you feel, though, being a Latina on BET and hosting a show like that? Like, honestly, what was the feedback that you were getting back then?
Honestly, because, like you mentioned, it was not my first time on TV. And like, I did have a Latino audience that sort of came with me because I left the roof kind of abruptly. Mm-hmm. And they were like, the audience was just like, well, where did she go? I was the host for the show for 2 years. And, de la noche a la mañana, is like, I left and I was in Miami, and now I'm in New York. And I feel like a good amount of the audience came with me, but then I had this whole other audience that had never even heard of me, seen me. I mean, yes, a little bit, again, sprinkled in the mix of being in the audience before being on the main stage and then doing the after school show. But, the after school show, it wasn't the flagship show. 106 was the show. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was, who's this girl? And, where the love that AJ and Free had was, you couldn't compare it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to fall into trying to be just like Free or, and it's a lot of pressure because she was so fly. She had the most stylish outfits, shoes, like all of these things. And I certainly didn't have those things. And and yes, we had wardrobe, but it wasn't the same, you know? So I put more pressure probably on myself than anything else. I think the audience embraced me though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel at a point where that was too overwhelming for you, or you were just like, I'm going with the flow? And then here you come getting in the stride of things.
Yeah.
And then here we come.
Yeah.
Right behind you.
Yeah.
You know, did you even know that they were looking for new hosts for 106 in Park?
I think that we were privy to that information, because then at some point we were promoting the fact that this was happening, right? And I'll never forget that I really wanted, I felt so comfortable hosting with Tigger, and he was really a great host in the sense that if for whatever reason I couldn't figure out my stride, or, you know, it's live television. So every day you really feed off the audience, and then you also just however you're feeling that day, that's what you're bringing, right? For the most part, there's only but so much, you know, fronting you can do and show up and like be inauthentic, right? So you would try or whatever it is if you weren't feeling it that day. But he was really, really great at being able to hold it down and bounce off of, we had really good chemistry, I think. And he also taught me a lot. He's just really great with a mic and people. Yeah. So I learned a lot. And then it was to the point where I felt like this codependency, that when they did bring in Terrence, that I, to this day, I'm like, my God, I really wasn't that nice to him. I gotta admit, because I just felt like Tigger was my big brother, and I didn't want I wanted us to be the ones. I didn't want to like have any switch up. And I thought, well, who's this guy? Yeah. And I couldn't really figure out the chemistry. So it was a lot. And I just literally, in my mind, I was like, if I just, you know, give off the energy of, I don't want to do this with him, then they'll bring Tigger back, you know? Right. Which was not the right thing. It wasn't the right thing. At all. You know, you never know who you're going to be hosting with. And the goal is to have that, you know, you should feel like a co-pilot. A learning lesson that early. Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever ask Stephen Hill, why not you? Like, here comes me behind. First of all, I didn't think I was going to get the job. I'm like, they already got a Spanish girl hosting 106 in Park. They're not going to get another Spanish girl, you know, to host this show. Like, it's not going to happen. It's BET, it's Black entertainment television at the end of the day. It's not going to happen. Yeah. But then here I come. They say, Terrence and I are going to be the permanent host. Was there ever that moment you went to Stephen Hill and say, why not me? Why, if you were going to get another Spanish girl, why not me? Actually, no, I didn't think about it that way at all. I just felt that every day I would just be grateful to be called back and kind of do that. And then my personal contract was kind of coming to an end as well. So I was already taking meetings and auditions within the Viacom network, which, as you know, BET was under that umbrella. So I kind of surrendered to like, hey, whatever it's going to be. I also went in it knowing that it wasn't going to be a permanent situation. So I think that I just tried to show up every day like, okay, well, I don't know what they're going to throw at us today. It could be the last day. But I certainly had a great time, as you know, doing that show. It's life-changing. Yeah. So it's the foundation to so much. Because every day it's like, aren't you that girl that was on that show? It's like, yeah. Is your name Julissa? Yeah. No, I'm Roxy. Yeah. So but I remember back then too. That's so funny because I don't think we look alike at all. I don't get it. You know, it happens to me almost every day. That's crazy. Like, almost every day. It's either, hey, aren't you that girl? And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get Julissa, right? I'm like, Roxy. Julissa was before me, but I get it. Yeah. Like, equally as beautiful. But I remember back then, the things that a lot of people talked about was your accent. Yeah. And your accent was something that you had to battle with a lot in the industry too. Before Sofia Vergara came into the scene and made accents really, really cool. How, was it really like a handicap for you back then, your accent? Is it something you really had to battle with? It was more about the narrative that I started to create for myself feeling like now this is a hindrance and I have to fix it. So, the more that saying of, the something persists, it resists. Mm-hmm. So I started to kind of lose myself in feeling like, okay, well, if I am not being accepted, showing up exactly how I am, then that's not okay. Mm-hmm. And it just makes you feel like you have to work on this or you will not work. Mm-hmm. And then it was really surprising because I would work on it. And the battle really was, I'll break it down like this. It was more so, I wanted to show up. I felt like I was going to be putting on this facade that wasn't me, or I felt like inauthentic if I can't show up exactly how I am. But I also understand being able to modify. I know now the word is code switching. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever been really good at that. I always felt like, oh, but I'm selling out if I'm like all of a sudden, I'm never going to pronounce my name Julissa Bermudez. I was very much Julissa. To this day, people say my name wrong. And it's like, I felt so connected to my upbringing, my culture, and kind of like I didn't want to show up feeling like the watered down version of me. I felt that wouldn't, like the people that were sort of coming along with me and felt seen by me being on TV, I was going to be letting them down. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to be a disappointment to exactly who I am, which is, born in Dominican Republic, raised in Queens, New York, lived in Miami for a little bit as well. Like I wanted to show up in that way. So the battle was more like, how can I do that, but also be TV friendly and not just put myself in a box, because I obviously wanted to do more hosting and have more opportunities. But then when you get called, sassy, or the feedback is these things that you're like, okay, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So it was more of that. And then the story that I was creating about, this is just who I am. And now I'm like, not going to be accepted. So the energy is different, because if you're already going into something feeling defeated, people are going to sense that. Mm-hmm. So the confidence, I struggled with it a little bit in showing up exactly how I wanted to.
Do you think that you had to suppress your Latinness basically to kind of stay into the industry? You kind of did have to like subject to it, because at the end of the day, I always say I'm a puppet. Like I'm a puppet. You guys are pulling the strings on what we do. As hosts, you guys are controlling the narrative.
Well, definitely at our time, for sure. Like when we first started. Mm-hmm.
So now being able to embrace your Latinness and being authentic and showing up, how has that changed your confidence in the game?
Well, it has changed because my goal is building community. And I feel that, again, it was about being able to show up exactly like how I can be an example to my community and the people that look like me, sound like me. Again, there was this thing that I didn't want to feel like I was letting people down, that, feel seen by me. It's changed quite a bit, because once you sort of take ownership of exactly what you're committed to, then it doesn't really matter. Like the opportunities, the saying, lo que está patina de te lo quita. Mm-hmm. So it was really more that. And I do understand that it is a little bit different. I think one of the things I had to really digest was, okay, you're not just on TV for main cities that have people that look like you. You're not on TV just in LA, and you're not on TV just in Miami or in Texas or in New York. Like, there's a whole other, amount of states, and the flyover states, as they call them. There's people that have never even seen girls that sound like you and I.
Yeah.
And you have to keep those people in mind as well. Mm-hmm. And you didn't, those were the things that I started to learn. So when I do show up, Bubbly and Julissa Bermudez, they're like, am I watching Telemundo right now? Like, What am I watching? Because I'm pretty sure I thought I was tuning into an American network.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that I learned along the way.
There's so much that I want to keep on talking to you about. Of course, I remember, because I know first of all, we're friends. So I know when you were like, I'm going to step away from television for a little bit, you started focusing on acting.
Yes.
Are you more comfortable in the acting world than you in the hosting world? Which one do you like more? I get asked all the time, so I got to ask you.
Yeah, I really love hosting. I went on tour with Steve Madden, the shoe designer, and did that for 7 years and was literally in different cities. And again, some people knew exactly who I was and would watch me.
Roxy from 106 in Park, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I was like, and then when I started acting, then people would mistake me for other people that were acting and actresses that were, doing much bigger things. It's always I know that I know you, and then most people recognize me off my voice. So when I do,
dead giveaway.
Yeah.
But what I'm most proud of
is my accent.
Oh, your accent.
Yeah.
But you also decided to become an entrepreneur.
Yes.
That by itself is amazing, because when we think about our parents and how much they've instilled in us and what they want us to do and get better, how proud was your mom at the moment that you said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on this, and this is where my money's going?
A, she doesn't know exactly how much I've invested in that. B, entrepreneurship is by far the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. I don't even use the word hard anymore because I overexhausted it in the process. And I was like, okay, I have to replace this word because hard just feels like exactly how it sounds, a hard stop, and I can't get past it. So I replaced it with challenging.
Yep.
Because at least you can, show up and meet a challenge. But it was, I gotta be real with you. Honestly, entrepreneurship for me came about at a fork in the road where I felt I was aging. I didn't know how many more phone calls I was gonna be getting from my agent. I started seeing that social media was the thing, content is king. And I was in this in-between phase, I didn't have the luxury of when I was on 106, like literally everything happened as I was leaving all the jobs, you know? So when I transitioned and left BET is when, Twitter and Instagram came about. So very different. You go from being on TV every day and you have the social media, game changing. I didn't have that, So because I was now pursuing my acting career, and then another social media, like a platform after platform was coming out, and I was just kind of missing each wave. And then then you also have to try to, find your stride in that because there's a pivot in that. So it was just a whole lot of a mix of things. And I thought, okay, well, if I go the entrepreneurial route and it's something that I'm passionate about because I don't want to do something that it's not going to feel genuine to me, what can that thing be? And I, as you know, being in so many hair and makeup chairs, and then also figuring out like, okay, I like beauty. This is a passion of mine, but in what way? Because, no offense at all, like how many more eyeshadow palettes can a person be sold? Like how many times can I sell somebody a lipstick when there's household names that are killing it in that space? And so I really got to thinking like, how can I create something that's going to feel really close to me and also have an element of my culture, and that's how that came about. But yeah, again,
that thing, República, that
República Skin. But yeah, it was more that I just did not. It was the unknown. I did not know where my next job was gonna be. I knew I was getting older. You know how that goes. Again, that's changed a lot nowadays. A lot of things don't even matter the way that we put so much emphasis on it when we started.
Speaking of things that don't matter, that we put a lot of emphasis on back then, was the idea of having children on television back then. And then now it's okay to be a mom. Thanks, Cardi. It's okay to be a mom on TV and, have kids and have a life, which was not even talked about or discussed during our tenure back then. Is it something that you regret?
Not having kids?
Not having kids yet, or not maybe like having settled down already by now?
So when it comes to that, I gotta be honest, I'm a little delulu, as they say. I really am. I still am. I'm 40 years old now, and one day I wake up when I see all of my friends' beautiful kids, and I think I show up as best as I can as an auntie. But yeah, some days I really do feel like, is that a missing piece of the puzzle? And then other days I feel completely complete, and that's okay too. Mm-hmm. And I really don't want to fall into the, and then you get the comments too. Yeah. It's like, girl, what's wrong with you? You're at this age and you don't have a man and you don't got kids. Like there must be something wrong with you. It's like, well, maybe I don't show that aspect of my life, because I don't. Mm-hmm. I really haven't shown that part on my social media, and I don't really think people care that much. Right. But besides the few comments, and also I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of thinking that my life is not going to be complete if I don't have kids and this and that, and mm-hmm. the family and the dog and the whole thing, Well,
I want to know more about, you were close though, really close at one time.
Yes,
you dodged,
close.
I don't know if you would call it dodging the bullet.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay.
Which, by the way, that feels like a lifetime ago. Okay, I was engaged at 24 years old, and I think I even forget sometimes. I swear, Roxy, is like so long ago.
Looking back at it then, knowing now, would that have been the best decision for you? How much would your life have changed had you said yes or went through with that marriage at 24? And do you think that it's actually better to wait as a woman, to wait later in life to decide whether you want marriage and kids?
Well, I certainly would say, kids are a miracle. We know this. So the timing, I don't think is ever going to be right. And from the friends that I have that do have kids, they'll tell you. Mm-hmm. But my life would have been completely different. I don't think that I would look as youthful as I look. I consider myself to look pretty good for my age. I don't know if that would have been the case, because in retrospect, you don't know what you don't know. And I think with age, I've just acquired way more information, not just information, but about myself. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the things that if I were the day of tomorrow, have a child, the things that I would be teaching that child now versus back then, oh man, the level of growth you can't even compare.
Do you have any regrets? Something that you wish you would have done or had taken or done differently in your career?
Yes, I regret not joining TikTok faster.
Are you serious?
Absolutely, girl. Yeah.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
I know it's in limbo right now. We don't even know if that app is going to stick around. But yes, girl, the way and I know it sounds pretty silly, but really the regret is the pivot, and feeling as if I had it all in control. Like, well, why would I do that when I already do this, and I don't need to do. And it's like, no, moving with the times and figuring out how you can pivot in a way that still feels good to you, and you're not, my thing, and maybe I have to work on this, is this thing about selling out. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, how am I going to show up on this now too? I don't even know what to do. And meeting the challenge versus shutting down. And it just, yeah, girl, I know that's probably what the last thing you were thinking I was going to say, but I don't have that many regrets in life, to be honest. I will say, but again, I was young and I went about things kind of sometimes in a very hard-headed way. So I do have some regrets on how, I don't know if you would necessarily say burning bridges, but where I didn't feel where I was advocating way too much for these things that I thought were so important to me, that instead of just kind of relaxing, letting my guard down and coming from a place of, okay, well, let me take this feedback and work on something so that I'm not showing up, and a producer feels like, I can't work with this girl. Mm-hmm. She's too stuck in how she wants to show up and represent so much. Mm-hmm. So I guess because I was born in DR and then raised in the States, you kind of feel like you just always want, whenever I go back to DR, I always feel like, dang, am I Dominican enough? Or am I, that thing with your culture where you feel like you have to just have the balance of knowing everything about your culture, but then everything about here. And then it's so many things. And it's like, you know what, girl, just show up as you.
Exactly. What do you think was the turning point for you when you said, I'm going to just start showing up as me, and you became unapologetic?
Yeah. So many things. Because I think the times were changing as well. Like you and I said earlier, like these days you can really show up as you are, and there's going to be an audience for you. And that right there has been the beauty of social media. There's, two sides to every coin. And yes, social media has its sides that could just, if you focus on the negative, because there is a good chunk of that. But the beauty is also how people can show up passionately about something and really change their life and become social media sensations, make a living from it, be an influencer, a content creator. Imagine if we were content creators from the very beginning. Like you kind of can take your destiny into your own hands in a way, because you and I were relying on phone calls. And I mean, when I first started, it was literally you show up, you audition, you get a call back, then you got a producer session, then you have the chemistry test. It was so many steps. It wasn't about numbers.
Yeah.
Because what numbers are you showing?
Exactly.
So it wasn't about how many followers you have. So that's a game changer. So now when you can show up exactly as you are, unapologetic, people resonate with that. And that's huge.
It's not a salacious situation. It's not, for me, it's more about sharing wisdom of what you've already have accomplished. And I think you've accomplished so much as a woman in the industry. Our families, we come from traditional Latin backgrounds where we would have already had a kid, been married, dropped, we didn't get a choice. My mom always said, you're going to have to choose one. It's either your career or your family. I felt like I've had to choose my career.
Yeah.
Now we don't have to do that. Right. Now we can be more open, and the industry is a lot more forgiving. So with that said, it's something that I definitely look forward to maybe one day, but it's not going to make or break me anymore. I don't have the same stress as I did.
You could breathe.
Exactly. I'm cool with it. It's like kind of like.
Do you want kids?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed. Si Dios quiere. If I get one, okay. If I don't,
you froze your eggs, right?
Huh?
You froze your eggs.
You
started the process.
I started the process, and didn't go through with the process. I was with the relationship, and then I thought we were going to go all the way through and do it, and then he ended up.
One thing I that was a takeaway that you straight up called me one day, or I don't know who called who, but we were just catching up, and you were like, "Mija, don't be wasting your time out here."
Don't.
And ever since then, I gave myself a timeline.
So do you have, I'm glad I told you that. Don't waste your time. Because now you got 6 months before I'm like, hey, moving on to the next situation. I'm not sticking around at all. Yeah. But who has probably given you your best life lessons throughout your career? If you think about top 3, maybe things that you learned from other people.
Oh, that's a good one. I would say certainly my family, my mom for sure. I would say my best friend, Liz, she gives me some pretty good gems. And is just so supportive. Like when you have a support system and a team that feels really just like home, and no matter where you go. And I have a mentor as well that came in later in life with my entrepreneurial journey. But I think honestly, the biggest lessons are the ones that you kind of learn on your own.
Which one was that for you?
Starting a business, honestly, don't do it unless you're really passionate about it. Because I mean, even to answer your question about if my mom was proud, yes, I would say she is, but I think she was also really, really nervous for me. And it was, again, the being told doing the safe route, I put your money in real estate. Like, why are you investing in this? And, I thought, well, if this blows up, then I can buy all the real estate in the world.
Right.
Because that was my plan. In my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. This feels like something that I can, it felt like legacy. And then the reality starts sinking in, because then you realize, oh, I actually only know this much. And there's a whole lot more to learn as a business owner, you know, I wanted to get to a point where I can be here with you, talking, having a great time, and still have money being made, you know, not always feeling like I have to show up for the job because, again, the phone calls were not, it's with social media, things changed. So I really was trying to figure out, okay, how can I continue to do something that I'm passionate about while also, and I also thought this one thing, the hosting and the TV stuff would trickle over and be able to sustain this other thing, this passion. And now it's just a balancing act.
Right.
I'm like a multi-hyphenate hustler.
If people were to say, oh, I know Julissa, she's a TV host, she's an actress, she's an entrepreneur, she's a social media girl, but there's more to you. What more would you add?
I guess I would add that there's more than meets the eye. I like showing up, and I like showing up for people. I don't know exactly what that's called, but I would say a more, I guess, reachable than
approachable.
Approachable, yeah. Than maybe a pedestal that maybe people think that they need to put you on. Actually, more real than what I think sometimes gets lost in the weirdness of, you know, being out there, putting yourself out there.
Okay. I think that's it, Julie.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say? You know me.
I know you. I would say, if somebody were to ask me about Julissa, I would say, one, she's a girl's girl.
Oh, okay.
I would say
that's because after older brothers, I think I always wanted a sister.
You're a girl's girl. You the way you have girlfriend relationships to me is one of the most beautiful things because you show up for your girlfriends. And I don't have a lot of girlfriends, and you know this. I don't hang out with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But you have so many girlfriends, and I'm like, she has so many damn friends. It's like, damn, like you really show up for your friends. So I would say you're a good friend. I would say also that she's silly as hell. You're witty. You're quick to snap.
Hey, I'm working on myself. I'm a lot better.
I'm a lot better. Quick to snap. You could take shots of tequila today. You got more of a tolerance than I do. That's for damn sure. Yeah. You're like the Energizer bunny of energy. You're a sister, you know, you're a daughter. You're a hustler, definitely. You said that though. And you're actually spiritual, and you give really good advice too.
Oh,
like
thanks.
Yeah, you do. So that's what I would say.
Oh my God, people are listening to that.
Yeah.
Stuff?
So guys, but that's what I would say. Oh, you're an incredible friend, and thank you for showing up for me, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, girl.
Thank you so much. I got
you. Yeah, you know, I think at one point I've certainly felt that people would put this kind of like unfair competition
against us.
Yeah,
I think that if we're being honest to say, I think most of it was in both of our heads.
Yeah,
like I definitely wasn't coming for your job or anything you were doing. Yeah, you know, and vice versa. Like I remember there was a time where I was coming to you for advice, and I think you felt as if it was a threat. Yeah, and we were able to get past that because everybody has growing pains at the end of the day. But I think that's the industry that pins us against each other.
Again, I was so focused on figuring out how to carve out this lane aside from just being a Latina host. Like, let's be honest, a lot of the times we were going up for the same exact job, and there can only be one person that gets hired. And I actually think that even when we were doing the show that you were hosting and I would come on as a guest host, I'm like, we're actually really good together. And you just get further in life when you when you just realize, you know what? The teamwork is actually better than trying to be so committed to, she better not be doing what I'm doing. Right. You know what I mean? Because there was, that for sure in our heads. And also, I was like, well, if I'm doing this, like, why does she have to feel like she's doing it too? But you then realize, like, you're going to do it the Roxy way. I'm going to do it the Julissa way. And both ways are distinct and there's an audience, and it would just be really, I think we also came to this like unspoken agreement that ultimately it would be really whack and just sad if us too as Latinas that have this opportunities to represent in such ways, if we didn't get along. Like that would just be really whack.
I think that the industry pins women against each other so much, and it is, when you think about it, it is a small pool of how we work, and there's so few jobs, especially the big jobs that you go out for. But then it is that realization, it's like what's meant for you is going to be for you no matter who else is in the room trying to get that job. You know, like I've been in rooms where I don't get the job, but it was because it just isn't. And that was probably the biggest lesson I had to learn, was like it just wasn't my time. It wasn't meant for me. You know, good luck to whoever gets that role. But we are better when we work together. And I think women had to learn that. We learn that more now, especially with what's going on in politics. And we see how well, when women get together, we work together, how much we can accomplish. So that is definitely the thing. But yeah, there was that growing pain between me and you one time. Because I think that people just try to compare us so much. And I'm like, I'm nothing like Julissa, and Julissa's nothing like me. But people still want to be like, oh, Latin. Oh, so they're exactly the same. It's like, no, they're not. No,
and don't you feel like the jobs that you did get were always like super right for you?
Exactly.
And you're like, dang, like I get why that person ended up being the one to get that job. And like, I totally get the jobs that I've gotten. So how are you pivoting, obviously, besides just social media and now obviously podcasting?
See how she switches and she tries to take my show from me.
No.
And
well, and I will tell you this, I learn a lot from you too.
I like conversations. I like talking to people, and I like talking to my friends. And I think that my pivot now is to share more, get more out of my friends as far as who they are, to be able to share it amongst my audience and stuff like that. I think too many people just see the end result and they don't know how long it took to get there.
Right,
and
for sure.
And that's where the conversations die. But like for people, everybody's so immediate and think that success is so like a next day thing now. It's just not that. You put in them hours in the gym, you're shooting in the gym for a long time before you get to like this kind of level. So I think that that's where it's going now. I love what I do though. I love talking and having these kind of conversations.
What's your regret?
My regret would probably be not investing sooner, not buying properties, spending money on the bullshit. We spent a lot of money on bullshit.
Oh, girl, because then you had to
look the part, and the Joneses was real.
Listen,
damn it, free.
the looking the part is so real. And what people don't understand is that the amount of money that is being made versus the amount of money that, especially as single women, because you're not checking that box.
Definitely
different.
You know,
in the taxes. And,
definitely different.
And then learning the 1099.
It's definitely different.
So and how that shows up.
I wouldn't have spent as much money as I did back then. Now, I would have saved more. That's probably my biggest regret. Other than that, I have no regrets in not having kids. I have no regrets not ever, none of that. Relationships happen the way they're supposed to happen, and I'm still here, so that means there's still a relationship left for me. So I'm not worried about that.
Absolutely.
Career wise, I'm happy where I've been. So.
One of the biggest things I've learned from you career wise is I think you do a really great job at the code switching. Like how to still show up.
I always call it being not so much code switching. I call it being adaptable to my environment.
Oh, okay.
You know, I think radio taught me that.
Yeah.
When you're in several markets, and if you're in Boston, you got to sound like you have a Ka, you have to talk like you're in Boston, and you have to adapt to the city. When you're in New Orleans and you're in Texas and then you're in LA and and then even in New York, as soon as I get to New York, they're like, yo, where did this come from? And it's like, it just comes out of me.
Yeah.
You learn that because you have to adapt to your surrounding.
Yeah.
It's like acting. You have to adapt to whatever that role is.
But in any of that, don't you feel that you can lose
Never.
Your essence or the thing that you bring?
Never.
That's the part that I'm always trying to figure out.
Never. Because I'm still Roxy.
Yeah.
I'm still Roxy. I think that there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
Because you start acting more professional on a certain things call for certain things.
Yeah.
I can be Roxy 106 in Park and be at a HBCU and be on that stage and completely adapt to that audience.
Yeah.
Roxy on Good Morning America is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
You have to, it's not code switching, you're adapting to your environment and you're just holding yourself to a different level of professionalism that's asked for in that. You still could be fun. You could still, it's just a little bit of a different way that you carry yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that my time in radio has taught me that. My time, in all these different markets and doing all these different network shows and stuff like that, even cable, all my different jobs have taught me how to handle things in different levels.
Yeah.
Will Smith doesn't lose who he is, Philly, Will Smith, hip hop, Fresh Prince, just because he's doing a huge movie.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. He's still in essence who he is, but you still have to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
I
would call it, I came up with it was like modifying basically, because when I got the phone call to host the finale of The Hills, I was like, whoa, so now do I have to say my name, Julissa? Because it was by far one of the most, the way they show up on that show back then, it was very much, I don't even know people like that.
Isn't that crazy that you have to even think about having to say your name differently because of a show like that?
Well, yeah, but that's happened many times when I've gone to auditions. I'm like, okay, is this the network that I have to show up and say, Julissa? Is this the one that I have to, modify the most or lose? It's a whole, you go down the rabbit hole in your head about these things and you're just like, oh my God, this is exhausting.
Well, when it comes to your name, I will always tell you to show up and you always say Julissa Bermudez, exactly who you are. Yeah. I would never tell you to say it differently.
No, I know.
I would never tell you to say, you better not say your name differently, especially now. Back then I can see why, but now you better not say your name differently.
Oh, yeah. This is definitely a back in the day thing.
Definitely not no more. It's crazy the things that we have to think about in our heads and the things that people don't even realize until you get in front of the camera that you're like, oh, this is what I'm thinking about. Yeah. I have to think about how I say my name.
Well, once it was, revealed or when I really got it, that is like, oh yeah, you're not just catering to the audience that already knows
exactly. You. That's the biggest picture, I think, and that's the biggest learning lesson. Yeah. You have to know how to talk to everybody.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I do love, I can go anywhere and I will find something that I know I can take away with, have a takeaway or add value to, because I like to know people. One of the things that when I would host in different cities, I would always wonder, how did these people end up here? Out of all the places you can live, you just start thinking, about that. So it's like, to your point, you adapt.
You adapt. Chameleon. Yeah. Adapt to your surroundings. You change the colors of your surroundings. If it's brown right here, I'm going to be brown. If this is white, it's white. If it's green, I'm going to be green, purple, whatever. I'm totally a chameleon. Julie, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming and hang out with me. It's different because when I have my friends here to sit down, I'm glad that people get to know a little bit more about you.
I wore a blazer for you, girl.
You wore a blazer, and I was like, I'm wearing jeans and a polo.
I was like, I gotta show up.
You showed up. You showed up and showed out.
Bonita.
But when people want to get to know more about you, where do they go to follow you?
So on TikTok, it's the same as IG, official Julissa B, which, by the way, I hate that I had to put official because I joined so late. Again, resisting the pivot. But because whenever you put official in front of something, don't feel that official, but it is official Julissa B on Instagram and TikTok, and republicaskin.com is where you can get your sugar body polish and your skincare.
Which is the best sugar body polish, by the way. Anybody that has not tried it, you have to try it, all right?
We got travel size too.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mommy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Besos. Thank you.